Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday on this snowy and cold and icy and windy, but the internet stayed up for all of us for our roundtable. We're so excited. This is our first contributor. We were talking last year as we were going to 100 episodes. We're like, we need to keep evolving, do different things. There are things our audience likes more than they like other things. And people like Lori Osborne, people like Michael Giannetti have been on the show a number of times. Lori's a member of the Red Thread Collective. The Red Thread Collective will be coming back. Everybody's busy and in demand. But in the meantime, we started this contributor feature. So they're not guests. It's not a conversation. They're an integral part of the growth of Into the Outer Realms. They're friends, they're colleagues. And so we have them with us tonight, and we asked them to choose the topic. Mm-hmm. And they didn't even think about it. Haunted objects. So as you know, on this show, we don't always like to talk about demons, darkness, death constantly. So we're going to have some really uplifting, very positive. I mean, there is a lot of death. That's how these objects became haunted. But there's a lot of really positive stories. So let's roll the opening, get those folks on screen, and let's talk about haunted objects. Episode 103. There exists a realm beyond our wildest dreams, a realm beyond reality that the gatekeepers and guardians have always told us consists of nothing but tricks of the eye, weather balloons, swamp gas, sand cranes, fairy tale myths of monsters, crackpot conspiracy theories, and desperate cries for attention.
We know this realm exists, and it's just beyond the horizon. The preset path, the well-worn walkways where the cynics want us to stay.
Instead, give this a listen. Put on your headphones, adjust your volume, close your eyes, and fasten your mental seatbelts, because the twilight-tinged turnoff from reality's alluring highway is looming just ahead.
We're about to leave the plane of the easily explained, couldn't possibly be's, and the no way I just saw what I saw's, for the spaces and places where everything is possible, and if you stay long enough, even probable. We're about to take a journey into the outer realms. Thank you to our son Jeremy for composing that awesome intro. Mm-hmm. I love it. Let's say hello to everyone and then bring on our contributors. Hello, Mario. Hello, Ronald, CL, Jessica, Angelina. Angelina, we have Traveler here that Lori designed, and we also have Eleonora is with us back behind Tanya, peeking out. She can see right through you, Eleonora. We found that out. So she's watching the show. Everybody's watching the show. Welcome on a snowy night. Let's get right to it. Yeah. Haunted objects. Let's bring on our contributors. Mm-hmm. Here we go. I sound like a game show host. I apologize. Michael Giannetti, we're not doing bios, guys. This is part of the team. You know who these wonderful folks are. Michael Giannetti, come
Lori
on down. Yeah. Lori Osborne, come on down.
You had me cracking up when you said we're not going to be talking about death today, but we're talking about haunted objects.
Like, I know. I was like, okay, here's the thing. I'm a writer, and I love alliteration, and I needed another D, and that's what came to me, death. Devil's darkness. And death, but yes, we do deal in death here on the show.
Some of these objects may be satanic. No,
a couple of them might be. We're going to get those out of the way right away. But let's just kind of yeah. We said hi to everybody, so let's settle in. All right, so let's just start by when. Well, let me ask you two, because you were both very quick, I think, on this. Why haunted objects? Why to talk about that on the show?
Well, I actually think that's a topic that most people don't understand.
Great.
So I think that, to me, it's something important that people do need to know a little bit more about. And also to, again, I like to talk about this a lot, how TV distorts things.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So you obviously have movies and documentaries talking about different haunted objects that make it way more than what it is. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great answer.
Yeah.
Lori?
Well, I don't know that if I have a lot of experience with haunted objects other than a couple in my lifetime, but I do feel the vibes off of things. And I think our possessions and the things we love get imbued with our vibes. And you can pick that up and you can read it.
Yeah.
So,
So I'm really hoping. Thank you both. I'm really hoping by the end of this hour, little more than an hour, however long we go, that everybody out there in the audience is going to realize that to just talk about Robert or just talk about Annabelle when you're talking about haunted objects, or going to a fancy museum out in Las Vegas, say, and spend all kinds of money to see things that are horrible and evil and make you want to take a salt shower. That's only a little piece of what it is. And the broader story, Lori has some really touching stories, and we have a story that I can't wait to tell later in the show that's amazing, and tell us that, yes, like Lori said, not only do these objects that we have imbue with our own energy, but they help connect us to others in really good ways. So let's start with, you guys saw when I advertised the show, I had to put Robert and Annabelle. Because it does get viewers to come in, and that's what everybody wants to talk about. Haunted dolls. They look like humans, and I guess there's a lot of reasons why. But let's get the tropes out of the way, as my notes say. Michael and Lori, you guys are going to talk about Annabelle. I made us a little slideshow. Haunted objects and Into the Outer Realms contributor roundtable. And here she is, so harmless looking.
That's actually my favorite part about the entire Annabelle story, especially, and I'm sorry, I'm so bad with movie names. The movie about Annabelle, was it The Conjuring?
The Conjuring, I think.
Well, the Conjuring series, I know it's Ed and Lorraine, but I think there is an Annabelle movie, and then there's a couple of others.
Okay,
Yeah.
I get so confused with it. But
I didn't watch them.
I watched parts. That's all I could say. But I loved when they were advertising it and they had the porcelain doll that's all super creepy and eerie. Yeah. And this is the reality. Raggedy. So that in itself humors me because of the fact that people see a creepy doll because older dolls, they made them differently. Mm-hmm. Especially the ones where porcelain and stuff. And with age comes, decay on the items. So people see this and their first thought is they see a creepy older doll is, oh, it's an Annabelle doll, it's haunted. And it's like, no, the cute little Raggedy Ann doll is actually the one that's possessing everybody. So that in itself humors the crap out of me with it. So,
and I think that they get across between the movie facts and the actual facts of the story, and they confuse the two together.
Yeah.
Whereas, honestly, the real story of the real Annabelle is not that. I mean, it is strange and odd, but it's not.
But it's not as sinister.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, right. There really isn't, from what I understand, that there really wasn't that much. That some strange things happened, and then all of a sudden, here come Ed and Lorraine, and they're like, "Oh, it's a demon, and we'll take the doll."
And before you guys give us the history of this doll, because that's important, and I know virtually nothing about it, because it's just not my thing. Right? We've watched the Conjuring movies, we've watched the Insidious movies. I just don't dig haunted, like Chucky and all that nonsense. It's just not my bag. So. Anyway, I just want to say, as a writer, and this year when I'm doing solo shows, because I'll have once every 6 weeks or so, I'll be solo. I really want to talk about how the paranormal gets, how the paranormal gets pushed through the entertainment shredder. And people don't always remember that. I want to say, from the shows, right, the reality shows, to the movies, it's hard what we do. I've taken a number of true stories and turn them into pieces. And you get fictionalized and you combine characters and you change dates and names and titles. I put a whole paranormal thing into my pirate books, but it's the responsibility of the audience to keep it in mind. Because like Michael said, every time you come across a porcelain doll in an antique store, if you're going to flip out and think this thing is going to kill you, that's not good for anybody. So that said, what is the true story of Annabelle?
If I can back up for a second, though, with what you were just saying, because you actually brought up something that was really funny to me, because keep in mind, Annabelle is the name of the real doll. They obviously made a creepy porcelain version compared to the real Raggedy Ann doll. But Robert is actually the real doll that the Chucky doll is based on in Child's Play. Right. So I think that that's actually really funny, because the difference, at least between the two, is they're trying to portray off of the real Annabelle doll in those movies, whereas Child's Play, even though it's based off a real doll, they created a whole brand new character concept off of it. For that reason, I can respect the Child's Play movie, because it's based off of it, but they're not trying to steal that story.
Right.
Nice.
And turn it, and replicate it the same way. So
yeah, that's a great point.
So
you're going to talk about Robert next, because he scares me.
Yeah, Robert's creepy.
Yeah,
I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, he's scary, and we'll take another look at him pretty soon. But so Annabelle is a Raggedy Ann doll, which I'll tell you, if I'm sitting in a room with a bunch of other writers, we are not starting with a haunted Raggedy Ann doll. It's a non-conversation
and that's
starter.
fair. Yeah.
Right.
But that's why I kind of feel like, they should have taken the story and made it different than what the reality is. Because the obvious reality, and I know, Lori, you'll be able to chime in with this too, but it was, I believe, 2 like college aged or just out of college
nursing students.
Yeah, I think it was the one's mother got her that as a graduation gift or something, and these things started happening. And so it wasn't like a lifelong doll or whatever, or it was just something that was gifted to her, put in their house, and they started having these strange events happening, which is similar to what they do in the Annabelle movie itself. But again, they changed everything to making it way more sinister. I'm not really 100% familiar on the true version of it, so I know, Laura, you'd probably be able to talk better on that aspect of it.
Right. So it was a present. A woman got it for her daughter. I think it was a birthday present. And there were 2 nursing students that were roommates. And there was also not the daughter, but the other girl. She had a fiance that was also involved in this story. And that was, in the end, that doll is the one that attacked that man who was the fiance. So, and he even says he doesn't really know if it was a dream sequence or if it was reality. That was part of what was said in the research that I did. But anyway, so they got this doll, and it turns out that it starts moving from room to room, and or just changing position. So they get a medium to come in. And the medium comes up. The girl had already, I think, named it Annabelle. And Annabelle, I think, was the name of the girl who was killed. Now, according to one story, the girl was killed in a car accident in front of the building. In another story, she was killed in the field where the house is. So there's some disparity, there's some discrepancy there. Of course, things started escalating, but it was never really harmful until they came home and they found it with blood on it. I think it had, and they tested it. It was like real human blood, and it had 3 drops on a hand and maybe a drop on its chest. So anyway. And then so those researchers come in and they deem it haunted, and they take the doll, and the women give it up willingly. I mean, they were like, here, take this. Yes. So that's kind of the version.
Now it's worded with a cross and warning, positively do not. Is what the sign says there. Positively do not.
because and it's do not open is what's covered up. But there was a guy who was pecking on the glass, and he was saying, "Oh, give me your worst, give me your worst." Even just saying this just kind of freaks me out, being near the picture. But anyway, so then the story goes that he got on his motorcycle when he left the museum and ran his bike into a tree and was killed. So,
Yikes.
Yeah, and I've heard different stories of people who have gone to the Warrens Museum and have poked and prodded, if you can say, even with the wardings and stuff they put around it. Once they leave there, something bad happens to them, whether it be death or injury or harm or.
You know, I was a guest on Three Beers podcast last night. We were talking about Japanese demons and ghosts. It's a fascinating subject because they really deep dive and categorize. And some of them, you know what you're gonna get when you interact with them. And I said to those guys and to their audience, if someone pokes knowingly into something they shouldn't poke into, I will help them fix it, but I'm not going to be kind about it. Like, I don't wish anybody ill. But the doll has a reputation. There were deaths involved. There's some kind of curse or something around it, possibly. To provoke, you know, that kind of provoke, that's where reality TV, it started in the 90s with these big muscle bound guys going, "Oh, you dirty so-and-so," blah, because somebody taught them, oh, if you piss off a spirit, they produce more energy and you get a better response. It's bullying. It's horrible.
You actually have a set of people on TV who like to poke and prod at the ghosts, if you can say, and they also have a haunted museum in Las Vegas. Not giving any names out.
Yeah, exactly.
They disgust me. And I hate to be that person to be rude like that towards, but they do such vile things when it comes to how to properly enter a place that could be deemed haunted, an object that could be, because they're not doing it right. They're doing it for views. And unfortunately, people will go into, and obviously the Annabelle story has been around for way longer than them, but people would go into a place like the Warrens Museum, see that Annabelle doll, and think it's okay to poke at it because they watch these people on TV doing it and getting away with it, because the items they're dealing with aren't really legitimately haunted.
Right.
Well, and over and above that, not only are they going to places like the Warrens Museum and being disrespectful to whatever may be there, but going into other locations and being disrespectful to not only the spirits that are dwelling there, but the people who are trying to resolve whatever issues they're having. It's just, don't even get me started.
That's a whole different show. But
as far as it's an ongoing theme, and it goes all the way back to Rosemary Ellen Guiley, our mentor, who was really carrying that flag in the last years of her life. But the movie A Knight's Tale, Chaucer is in it. Paul Bettany plays him, and he says to these guys that do something horrible to him, "I'm going to eviscerate you with the pen." So I have a new short story out on Amazon Vella, and I fully cartoon and parody those people. So that's my way of dealing with it. So Michael, you have a fan. You have a fan.
Hey, how you doing?
So I don't want to put the two of you on the spot. As far as you know, have any responsible mediums tried to communicate with the spirit attached to Annabelle and find out what's going on?
Nothing that I know of.
Isn't that sad?
Keep in mind, and again, this is probably a totally different show that could be had, but the Warrens,
right on.
I don't know their validity on things, but they also, I mean, if Elizabeth Warren was such the medium, why wasn't she doing it?
Yeah.
But there was the medium in the beginning. That was the first person they called.
Yeah, but I mean, as far as after the fact,
Yeah, I would guess that first medium, their work has kind of been buried or superseded by the Warrens.
That's
right?
Yeah.
The paranormal superstars, the Warrens. Maybe someday we'll do an episode on Amityville Horror, because I've been studying that for decades. I'm pretty sure
that was a Hollywood con job.
Yeah. When we bought this house, it had those windows.
Oh,
No way.
Yeah, it did. When we remodeled, we took them out.
Oh my
yeah.
gosh.
Yeah. Better safe than sorry.
I believe that there is probably some paranormal validity to the Amityville house. I just don't think that whole story matches up the way it's supposed to.
We're in agreement. I think that there is there's a fascinating book. We can't afford to go too far sideways because we got a lot of ground to cover. But there's a book called The Night the DeFeos Died. And it tells the story of Ronnie DeFeo's family, and they were a highly problematic, highly dysfunctional family.
Yeah.
I highly recommend that book. So any last words on Annabelle?
No.
Okay.
Lori,
Tanya, tell us about in some way he kind of looks like a potato man, but in some ways he's just scary AF.
Well, it's part of the thing with Robert is exactly what Michael was saying earlier. First of all, dolls were made differently back then. The materials that were used, and he's completely different now. And we'll get into that. It's very similar, his story, to what Lori was saying about Annabelle, and that's how these things go. There's always different versions. So as I was doing my research on Robert, because actually I knew about him, but I really didn't know the whole
We
story.
saw him as a segment on somebody's paranormal show.
Yeah, I mean, I was aware of him, but I didn't remember or know the whole story. So I did some research prior to the show, and I found two very different stories, two very different accounts of his history. They're kind of similar. Basically, Robert the doll belonged to a boy by the name of Robert Eugene Otto, and Robert and his family lived in a home called the Artist House in a big mansion. Now, one story says that the family's one of the family's servants made the doll and gave it to Robert, but the one that seems more likely and obviously more researched, more plausible, thank you, is that the museum that currently has Robert did some research and found out that a company called the Steiff Company in Germany actually made Robert. Now, if you look at Robert, if you bring the picture back, I have a hard time believing that a servant with their limited, resources are going to be able to make a doll like this.
Afford that, yeah.
It seems more likely that the Steiff Company, and I thought it was interesting too, the dog came with the doll. So how did the servant have the materials to make that dog? And if you look at the dog, the Steiff Company is the same company that made the original teddy bear in honor of Teddy Roosevelt.
Oh,
and they're expensive. It's expensive.
Yeah.
It's
very,
in the early 1900s, that's a very expensive doll. So of course he has decayed over the years, giving him that creepy effect. So I really believe the research that the museum was able to dig up, it came from the Steiff Company. I'm not buying the servant because apparently the servant may have cursed the doll before giving it to the little boy, and it was revenge on the family. I'm not buying any of that. But apparently the boy's grandfather was in Germany, saw the doll, got it as a gift for his grandson. Now, once Robert gets the doll, which, by the way, Robert didn't go by Robert, he went by Eugene. So from this point forward, I will call the little boy Eugene and the doll is Robert. So Eugene gets the doll, and now weird things start happening. Immediately, he becomes obsessed almost and completely attached to the doll. He takes it everywhere. He talks to it. It kind of reminds me, you were talking about Amityville earlier, like the little girl in Amityville where she's talking to, this invisible friend. And that always creeps me out in the movie. But imagine this little boy, he's talking to this doll as if there's a two-way conversation going on. And that was really freaking people out. And then also there's accounts of he would leave the doll in the window when he would go to school, and the other kids would walk by the house and they would see the doll moving in the window, and that would freak them out, which would freak anybody out. So apparently this goes on. Eugene has the doll up until he dies in 1974, and he's still living in the family home in 1974 when he passes, at which point a woman by the name of Myrtle Reuter purchases the home and it gets Robert. with the home. So, and now she doesn't know what to do with them, and she puts them in the attic. But people report now that they're hearing footsteps in the attic. They're hearing some giggling going on. Objects are being moved.
That's why I don't get involved with haunted dolls.
So, according to the account from the museum, she puts up with this for 20 years before she finally donates Robert to the museum. And I am so sorry. I forget the name of the museum, and my bad. I forgot to write the museum down. It's in Key West, Florida, but any Google search of Robert the Haunted Doll will bring up the museum. So if anyone's interested, but it is in Key West, Florida. So what's really interesting, Michael mentioned that the movie Chucky is loosely based on Robert, but people will go, and accounts say that if you take his photo without his permission, or if you make any disparaging remarks or disrespect him, you will meet some bad juju. So people have had car accidents, they've had, other kinds of accidents, just bad. So he has thousands of letters of apology posted in the museum behind his display. People write to Robert begging forgiveness for being disrespectful, but also people write and ask him to put curses on people that they don't like. People send him candy, cookies, treats, thousands of letters this museum is getting on Robert's behalf. Now,
I've heard that people sent apology letters to Robert for crossing him the wrong way and the things that they've had to go through. So,
yep. So, whew, I don't know. I mean, Annabelle, I question whether anything ever was going on with Annabelle, frankly, based on the tiny bit of information that there is with that story. Mm-hmm. Robert, there's not a lot more information, granted, but you have thousands of people are motivated to write letters to this doll. I don't know. It makes me wonder what's really going on there. But my thing is, you have no idea what has attached itself to that doll. So when you're writing and asking, can you put a curse on this person, or can you help me out with this thing or that thing, or even just here, have some candy. Like, what are you?
You have no clue who you're.
Yeah.
Well, the day before your birthday, we're doing a show with Michael, and Ciel's going to come back. Ciel was with us last week. It was a great conversation. And we're going to talk about witches in fact and fiction. And I think we need to talk about curses. Because curses are complicated things. And when you send them, anything you send, I mean, it's in the Bible. Send anything out, it comes back to you sevenfold. If you think it's only the good stuff, there's a Gollum thing going on where every time you curse someone or request that, it takes a piece of your own. I think the Harry Potter books do that really well. Evil takes pieces of your soul. So let's move on and let's get to something a little more pleasant. Lori, you're going to share a story with us about a ring.
And I'm wearing the ring.
Oh, nice.
Wear the ring all the time. Tanya and I were together when I found it. I found it in a local thrift shop that is for charity. And I picked it up and I immediately saw a woman in like a very well-maintained woman, but an older woman, very thin. And she had on a suit, almost like a pillbox hat, and was very put together. And so I saw that and I handed it to Tanya and I said, "What do you see?" And she told me the exact same thing. But it wasn't an evil. I didn't get, a negative vibe at all. So we were on down the line. We went to another consignment store here in Morgantown. And this woman who was at the shop, she kind of has skills. And she said all she could see was black hair. Remember that? Like black hair. I do
remember.
And I think she was seeing the person that was making the ring, because it's obviously an Asian style ring. So I'm wondering if she saw the person that was carving the jade.
Yeah.
So
wrong direction.
Oh. not that finger now.
Nice.
But
Very cool.
yeah, so there it is. And I don't have a negative feeling about it at all. Did you, Tanya?
Not at all. In fact, if anything, my sense, you and I both saw basically the same woman, and we both got the same sense of her being very meticulous. She was very meticulously dressed.
And Tanya and I, we shop together, and when we go to antique stores and we do this, I never hand you something and say, what do you feel? I don't know why I was compelled with this. And this was the thing that I wanted you to read.
And I was really curious too, because you have never really done that to me, when we've been out shopping. It was so cool that we saw the same thing. I think if anything, because she was so meticulous, she would be so happy that someone like you, who could really appreciate the ring and honor it, and talk about it and share it with others, that I think, you got pulled to it for that reason.
And, white jade has a lot of its own very good qualities.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway,
Yeah.
That's the ring story.
Nice.
Apologies, folks. If you saw something come up in the chat room totally inappropriate, I apologize. I think I got it. So yeah, Lori, did you feel like pulled to the area? Anything to indicate possibly that the woman chose you as the next owner of the ring?
We were standing in front of the case, and I think we were talking to another one of your friends at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I turned and I looked like something was calling me. And I turned and I looked and I just asked the woman, I said, I want to see this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how it went down. Yeah.
Yeah, that's, I think, wonderful. Now, I want to shift gears and keep conscious of time. Michael, I remember Tanya and I did a presentation at the Buckland Museum, Witchcraft and Magic. If Stephen and or Tony are watching this live or after the fact, giving you all good love, folks, you got to go to this place in Cleveland. We've all talked about it a lot, but you were there, and I remember they opened up one of the cases and you put on some of the rings and stuff. Can you just talk about that? It was
actually, the funny thing with that was Tony opened the case and was showing Tanya and I both a couple different rings, asking for our impressions on it. But I remember specifically thinking one was really strange because she handed it to me and I wasn't putting them on. I was just holding them in my fingers. She gave me the one and I went and stuck it on my finger and stared at it. Couldn't give much information about it at the time, but I was like gobsmacked by it. Gave it to Tanya, who did her thing. I was driving home. I was on the turnpike, had to pull over onto the side of the road because I was getting such vivid images, flashes, and it was the craziest thing I think I've ever experienced. Ironically enough, at the time I flopped on Ray Buckland's ring. So I kind of felt bad after I realized it because I felt like I disrespected the piece. But it was obviously a draw to me. I had to put it on. I got this connection with it. And ironically, it started surging this thing within me because I wasn't practicing my craft the way I was supposed to be. And it kind of was like that wake-up call for me. But literally the most intense, crazy bolts of things that I need to do, had to do, what I needed to work on, to the point where, like I said, I couldn't concentrate. I had to pull over. I literally got out of my car and went and sat in the grass. I was like, thank God a cop didn't drive by at this point.
Yeah, which is good. Ground yourself. That's what we always say.
Yeah.
And then, so folks, so Michael, just so we're clear, and they probably understand this, you didn't take the ring with you, but
no, it
once
was
the
just,
connection
I stuck it on my
was
finger,
made,
which I felt was
once the connection was made. Yeah.
I agree with you when it comes to the Bucklands. Like, I love the complete idea and concept. I felt like I was being disrespectful by putting it on my finger because that wasn't mine to wear. But, it was just one of those things that was just my natural reaction to put it on my finger. But the other two, like I said, I just held them in my hand for a moment and gave them back. That one was like flopped on and I was like, so it did something to me. But
I will say though, Buckland, as a teacher and all, and you put the one ring on, you didn't put the other two on, and then it kind of jump started your practice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel disrespectful. It feels like he kind of went, oh, this is an opportunity to.
Yeah, in retrospect, it was, but at the time I was like, oh God, what did I do? Because, to me, that would be like going to a museum and touching the Mona Lisa, So that concept is what my first thought was when it happened. But like I said, so I kind of panicked about it. But in retrospect, yeah, I agree with you. I think it was him kind of, coming from the side going, hey, so
Yeah.
do your thing.
So folks, go and see Stephen and Tony at the Buckland Museum. Look it up on the internet. Love those guys.
They changed stuff there so much too that, I mean, I've been there like 5 times. So, and each time it's a totally different experience. You have some of the same items, of course, but they rotate and change things so much that you're always getting a good display there.
Yeah. Angelina, I see your comment about antique stores, and we have a segment that we're doing tonight on that. So I'm going to hold your comment. Michael, we're going to switch now. We're going to stay with you, and you requested that we not have a picture, but you have a mirror that has a very interesting story. So.
Yeah, the mirror was not mine, and it wasn't even meant for me, but it ended up becoming part of my collection. So I have a friend who was given a phone call by somebody who lives in Canada and was like, I need help. I went to a garage sale, found this mirror, thought it was cool, brought it home, put it up. My daughters and I are all freaked out by it. What do we do? I need to get rid of it. Can I just throw it away? And that friend of mine said, no, send it to me. I'll take care of it. Because she figured she would at least, bind it or try to see if she could send it going. Or she had the package sent to her from Canada to her house. She mentioned it to me like a day or two after he originally contacted her, mind you. So this was like, at the time, it was some time had passed. Sent it to her. She got it in her house, looked at it, instantly put salt all over it and put protective stones around it and put it in a corner and shut the door. She knew she couldn't mess with it. It was probably about a month, I think, after she received it. I woke up in the middle of the night having a panic attack, going, I need that mirror. I need to see that mirror. I need to touch that mirror. I need it. And now, mind you, I forgot all about it at this point because it was a couple months at this point since she originally told me, and she wasn't talking about it. She just mentioned it once. The next day I called her and I was like, I need to see that mirror. I need to touch it. I need something with it. It woke me up in the middle of the night. She goes, do you want it? Because I can't have it. She goes, I got it and I salted it instantly and put it off to the side. I was like, please, I need it. Something. I ended up taking this thing and it was such a process because I had the protective crystals all around. It was boxed still. She never even tore the tape off, nothing. And I'm sitting there trying to do this balancing act with salt around it and getting into my car, driving so carefully home, did not let anything, got it in, had to go through the whole ritual. Long story short of it, I did a lot of work with it. It took me some time. It was the mirror of a gentleman who passed away in his house, and that was his way of keeping an eye on his property. He liked where he lived. He wanted to keep an eye on things. He got stuck in it. So then the mirror got taken from the house, he was a hot mess because he was frantic, upset. Things were not the way they were supposed to be, causing havoc and chaos to this family who didn't know what was going on with it. So thankfully I had that call to it. And I think he was letting me know too, because I knew how to work with it. So I have actually a portal place that is directly lined up from where the mirror is. So I allow him to be able to leave that and go into whatever other realm he wants to. But then when he comes back, he goes right into it. I didn't want an image of it because I do have protection stones and symbols around it. Plus, because the thing is even though he's fine and I don't want to encourage other things because it already is a portal spot and it's facing a portal spot. But I also don't want the image to be able to be put onto the internet because to me, I don't want to trust in taking a chance with that.
Sure. Right. It's a great decision. Folks, pay attention because that's a responsible caretaker of a haunted object. So you've seen him in the mirror?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
It's actually kind of funny because he doesn't actually look like this. But do you remember in the Poltergeist movies, they had that tall, creepy guy that was always in the suit with the bolo tie? He reminded me of him. Mm-hmm. Because I think the guy probably passed away in like the 60s or 70s. So he was kind of modern-y, but, still not. But like I said, he was like scraggly gray hair, creepier, like sunken in skin. So obviously, I think a little kid's going to see that in a mirror.
Oh, yeah.
Freak out because they're going to obviously probably think it's a monster of some sort, but it's just an old guy. So just misunderstood. But at the same time, he's also frustrated because he's like, where's my house? What's going on? I'm stuck in here. And couldn't figure out what to do. So it was just causing chaos around him. So,
but isn't it amazing how attached certain people get to their? I mean, right, Tanya? I would say 95% when we do a house haunting case, there is someone who just loved their house, and there's the Marine in the one house in the Great Plains that we did, who's looking over everyone. The little girls love his chair. They run around the chair. He left his Marine pin in the laundry room for the father of the house to find. He's been very, that's amazing. Now, Laura, you have a mirror story too, right?
But mine's not nearly as interesting.
Oh, that's fine.
My girlfriends and I, we went for my birthday. It was a place that was a combination of an antique store, and then they also did like tea or something. And so we went up there for my birthday, and we were looking around, and we were up on the second floor, and there was a mirror, and I was like, do not go near that mirror. And this was before I was really looking into this stuff and really getting involved. And I was like, everybody stay away from this mirror. I mean, I was unsettled. I had to leave the floor.
Wow.
And then we, and then we left, I think, pretty much. Yeah.
They can be very active portals. This comment here, there's a culture that believes mirrors trap souls, so they're covered up upon hearing of a loved one's death. That's fairly ubiquitous. We will say in our work, that's one of the first questions we ask now. We keep our mirror in our bedroom covered. It's an antique mirror, used to belong to my aunt Annette. But we keep our room so heavily warded. We keep a velvet cloth over that mirror. We've had people, if a haunting all of a sudden comes out of nowhere and they're being disturbed in their bedroom, certain room of the house, did you get a new mirror? Oh, yeah, there's a mirror. Cover that mirror when you go to bed at night. 9 times out of 10, they go, solve the problem. So mirrors are these very active, we engage with them. Think about famous folk tales, the look in the mirror and mirror on the wall. Scrying mirrors, right? We have one of Rosemary's scrying mirrors. So that's our advice, folks. If you start to have disturbances and you have a new mirror in the house, or you may just want to consider, if you have an active space, cover up the mirrors, even if you do it at night.
Well, another thing I wanted to add is if you are having trouble sleeping at night and you just can't get a restful night's sleep, do you have a mirror directly across from your bed? And it may not have anything at all to do with the mirror being a portal, but it's just bouncing that energy. I mean, just from an energetic standpoint, you're going to have a hard time having a restful night's sleep. So just cover your mirror. A lot of people have mirrors on their dressers or whatever, and they're directly across from the bed. So cover them up at night. You'll probably sleep better.
Our friend Angelina is good. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Michael.
No, you're fine. I was just going to say, but that also doesn't mean that you can't buy mirrors because everyone you buy is going to be haunted.
Exactly.
But it's just one of those. But it's one of those, like you said, if things start kind of kicking up, look at the mirror first.
Yeah. So Angelina's getting an image of that man in her head, so that these things happen. And Angelina's very talented.
Well, I was going to say too. Actually, I was going to say it, then I wasn't going to say it. But now that Angelina said it, I'm going to share as well. Michael and I are both friends with the same person that he got the mirror from. So we both know her, and she initially told me about the mirror when she initially told me about the mirror, I got the same image in my head, and I didn't see the mirror at all.
I actually didn't know you knew about the mirror, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because Tanya told me, and my initial reaction was, why does Michael have that? That was I was like, what does he get himself into? So here's a quick story. I think that's kind of funny, and then we're going to move on to something very dark, but I'm only going to spend a couple minutes on it. But Angeli tells the story. There was an elderly man who passed away in the house my brother rented. The man tried to scare me with music playing in the washing machine, but I liked the music playing. It was Creedence Clearwater Revival. So, I mean, we need to keep our sense of humor, not freak out. She didn't call some of these cool guys that look like rock bands and biker gangs and say, please banish this music fan in my washing machine to hell. She just kind of went with it. So Jackie says, wouldn't that be more of an antique, older hand-me-down mirror rather than a new one? folks,
Not
push back
necessarily.
on me, but I don't
No,
think
not
age of an
necessarily.
object has.
No, it's opportunity other than age. I think.
When it comes, one thing I can say from things that were, let's call it, say, from the 1800s versus now, is things were not mass produced the way they are now.
Mhm.
So there would be a bigger tendency for an item from back in the 1800s to be that much more loved and revered by the person who owned it, to have that much more of an attachment to it versus things from today.
Great point.
Because you think about it, somebody had a hand mirror back in the 1800s. That was probably the hand mirror they had their entire life.
Right.
And they had to love it, and because that was the one fancy gift they received. Or whereas nowadays, you go on Amazon, you can have 50 hand mirrors, one to replace the next one and the one after that. So we don't look at objects the way that they used to now.
Great
So
point.
granted, yeah, you could buy a new mirror, and if you have an active spot in your house, that mirror could kick up that activity. But more than likely, if there's going to be something attached to a mirror, it's going to be a very old mirror, because again, that's the way things were back then.
Right.
So
I think probably the materials too, the care that the mirror is made with. That's great points. I just wanted to, because people say too, does a house need to be 200 years old to be haunted? No. New construction can be haunted. To some paranormal investigators, that becomes like a real head scratcher, but it could be the property. It could just be disturbing the ground or new activity that draws a
or
spirit.
if the house is made from reclaimed wood from a really old house that somebody was attached to. I mean, there's a lot of factors.
Yeah, or has something. This was for later in the show, but I'll just say it now and get it done with. We had a haunting, a very complicated case for a family. But in our investigation, Tanya saw a woman who was attached to a fireplace that had been rescued from a house that had burned down. And the fireplace was put in this new house. And the woman loved the fireplace and she went with it. Very kind of passive. She wasn't involved in all the mayhem and the crazy, but she was there with her fireplace. She loved it and probably had spent so much time by that fireplace, probably designed it, chose the materials. And it was the one thing too that survived from her house.
I'll tell you, my house is nothing special, but I love my house. So when I go, I'm already planning my hauntings for it. So
there you go.
I mean,
that seems to be a theme. Somebody was talking about that last night on Three Beers. People are planning for Dan, when we were on Dan Palooza.
Oh, right.
He's got it all figured out. He's going to steal people's Mountain Dew and his cat's going to take it too. And there's going to be little cat prints in the puddles of Mountain Dew. Dan, I don't know if you're with us yet. He usually tunes in later in the show.
No, I'm a big
that is a
advocate.
very specific plan.
If you can manifest things in your life now, why can't you manifest your afterlife? That's when you really get to have fun. So
I think this girl's going to watch me. Hopefully I'll go first. But anyway, let me just say. All right, so let's get into this. To me is even darker than the dolls. This is the West Virginia State Penitentiary. Movie fans might recognize it. It's Shawshank Redemption. They filmed it there. This was a very, very violent place at a very, very violent time in prisoner history. Although yesterday, all the federal prisons were on lockdown because 2 people were murdered. So prisons are dark places. But in this is an object called Old Sparky. I have mixed feelings about giving a nickname to a lethal killing machine. So this is in the museum itself. Old Sparky took the lives of 9 men before, I believe, in 1965, West Virginia did away with the death penalty. But Tanya and I were working on a TV show project that didn't reach fruition, and we went to a museum that's near. It was a really nice day. We saw Moundsville from the outside. You saw some people, one guy in the window. We didn't want to go in, but we went to the mound there. It was beautiful. We had a contact with a Nadina woman. It was a very interesting day. But then we went to the Archive of the Afterlife. So give a shout out to Steve Hummel. This is a great place, but very, very energetically loaded, which is going to be our next segment of the show, how to ward yourself. So I'm walking through the museum, and there's everything from satanic Bibles to dolls to beds that the people still are attached to. and I walk around the corner, and it feels like someone took their fist and punched me right in the solar plexus. So I go, what the hell is going on? Well, this is what was going on. Right in front of me was the skull. I can't look at this thing to this day. So if anybody's getting weird, creepy feelings right now, I'm going to take it down. But, when I was getting
I
the
didn't
pictures,
like that when you put that up.
no, I can feel it very sharp in my back because I think, Michael, like Buckland's ring, once you've been in proximity to these things, some of that energy is with you. It stays with you. And the pictures of the 9 men whose lives were taken, murderers. Okay, let's not deify them, but still, the 9 pictures of the people are right above old Sparky. It happened to Emily too, another one of our contributors. They had gone at a separate time, and we were comparing notes. Right in the solar plexus. That thing is evil. Because it killed people, so it's a weapon, but it also took the life of 9 evil people. So there was a picture somewhere online with Steve Hummel holding this thing, and God bless, because you couldn't pay me enough money to hold that thing. I mean, seriously, 6 feet, and I almost lost my breath. I mean, that was that was really something. So I wanted to mention that. So Michael, you felt really strongly about this. Tips for people. Angelina says when she goes to, where is it now? When she goes to antique stores, she gets an icky feeling and all of that kind of stuff. So you want to give everyone, and then you and Lori can.
I actually struggle with that too, because I very much can feel, like you were saying, Lori, when you picked up that ring and you had that energy attachment, you felt, I get that when I touch things that are older and have attachments to them. Now, first and foremost, you do have to understand that, like, probably 99% of the things you would find in an antique store, if it has some sort of an attachment, again, it's not bad. It's just a person who used to be alive who was attached to the item. It's most likely just their energy or their essence that's attached to it itself. Now, granted, if there's a haunting attached to it, that might be a little bit worse. But one thing I'm not a big fan of people who just buy things and shove them in their house, because especially when you have something that's older and could have that stronger attachment piece to it, you kind of have to research things a little bit. Maybe sage it, do a protection on it, make sure that you're not just bringing. Because you think about the paranormal shows that are a little bit more legitimate. And I apologize, by the way, I had a procedure done the other day, so I'm still a little like mush mouth when I'm talking. So I hope you guys aren't catching that. But a lot of times when they do these paranormal shows, they're like, oh, I bought this thing at the thrift store, and then all of a sudden this happened, that happened, the other thing happened. And there's a reason behind it. When there's these attachments, those attachments come along with that piece. So when you're always going and buying antique things, you kind of have to expect that stuff to happen unless you take the proper procedures, prior to getting it. So, even just using CL on the show last week, talking about different protective stones, get one of the ones that are black that are for grounding and protection, and place it on that object, do a saging with it. If you don't know somebody who's a practitioner, find one and ask them if they could do something to help, find that object a little bit better for you, just so that way you could bring it into your house with a clean slate. And even if there is an attachment, then hopefully the two of you can work in parallel. You now have their item, and you're going to respect it the way they want it to be respected. So,
right. I love Angelina's story. I'm burning some incense in here, because that skull cap, when I was making the slideshow and finding the picture, it wasn't as bad as it is now. Angelina said it gave her a sharp pain in her forehead, which it was a skull cap. That's understandable. Thanks for taking it down. Jessica said the picture's above.
No, I didn't mean to do that.
Oh, hi.
That was a total accident. So sorry. I was trying to.
You're an instrument of evil. Leave the screen alone.
Move the pictures. Move the slide is what I was trying to do.
Oh, because we're kind of looking at it.
I'm going to do a little Outer Realms advertising real quick.
Thank
so
you.
If you guys don't have your merchandise, you need to get it. Some quality stuff here.
Redbubble and
Redbubble and Thread.
Less.
Less.
No.
Threadless.
Thread something.
Yes,
We're terrible.
Go on.
Threadless.
Threadless.
Michael, you're in charge of marketing.
Okay.
I was thinking of those old people,
We
thread
are
bangers,
terrible.
and
Yeah,
I didn't
not-
want to steal
Oh,
their
Not
name.
yeah.
threadband.
But
You're great. That's
Angelina
not
says
what
this:
you
when I
think,
purchased a china cabinet hutch from Goodwill, I came to realize an elderly woman who passed away attached herself to it. I promised her I will take good care of it and put items of photos of women in my family cooking in the kitchen along with my china and glasses. That's exactly what Michael was saying. And I think Lori too with the ring.
Mhm.
If we're good caretakers of these think about we always try to bring it back to the living. Let's always bring it back to the living because people can't conceptualize ghosts and spirits because of all the misinformation. If your grandmother hands something down to you, say it's a statue, and she comes and you got old dirty underwear draped on the statue, grandma's going to be angry.
Yep.
It's the same thing. You a disrespect. You disrespect it.
That's some
And Grandma
analogy
can haunt
you
you
came
just
up
as-
with there.
Well, listen. So here's some advice. Sanitize it in ammonium. To let you. Okay, I got fished in. Woohoo! Okay, we're not going to say that aloud for our radio audience. Sorry, guys. Yeah, right.
That may be one of the best comments we've ever had. So
It
thank
may
you
go
for that.
counter to good practice though. We have to be careful. I told this story I guess a couple weeks ago on the show. Someone came to us. They bought a house through an estate sale, and they were getting these horrible raps and knocks. They had to wear earplugs. They had to take sleeping pills. They couldn't sleep because of these knocks. So they asked, Tanya checked in, and she goes, "There's a woman attached to a dresser in your house." He says, "Oh yeah, all that furniture came with the house. It was a estate sale. It was a package deal." She wants a bundle of letters. Guy says, "Oh crap, I'm sorry, I don't have the letters. What do I do?" So Tanya did talk to her, explained to her, "Look, the letters aren't there," and all that. And it took her a while to, the knocking slowly diminished. So at first she wasn't having it. It was a process. I wouldn't tell him to pee on the dresser though. But anyway. Well, there you go. I feel like important now. We sort of got pumped. So let's see, where are we at here? We're kind of winding down. Oh, I want to say too, there's another wonderful place, but it can be very, very active, and that's Greene County Historical Society, Southwest Pennsylvania.
Yes.
We're going to be talking there next month about cases in Southwest Pennsylvania. It was a poor farm, room and rooms of antiques. Some things that are a little malevolent, but pretty human. There are a few things that are not human. I think it's becoming on TV now, but watch carefully when you watch those shows from Greene County Museum. Our good friend Kevin has written a book called Haunted Hills and Hollows in Greene County, and he kind of outs the TV program. So it's not as dark and terrible, but there are some things. But it can be a little exhausting to go through that place. And I had to leave the Archive of the Afterlife.
I did too.
I was worn out.
I
My
was in
solar
there.
plexus
Yeah.
and my whole energy field. Someone was talking about sometimes their stomach will hurt or whatever when they go to these places. So ward yourself, but when it's time to leave, if you're getting a headache or whatever, go ahead and leave.
It's like I don't go to like the prison at Moundsville. We did all of the tour of the Mound. I don't do that. I don't go to the asylum in Westin.
Me either.
Because you just don't know what. Now that place does spook me in that you don't know what will come back
Yeah.
with you.
Yeah. Well, you had the ice
Now,
pick
see, I don't
lobotomy.
mind going to those places, but I think that the spirits also know that they don't want to come back with me.
There you
So,
go. Well, that's good.
I
That's
gotta-
a good thing.
I have a hard set of rules when I go into these.
Yeah.
places. I
That's
think
great.
they're,
So the Westin Hospital or Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum was the older name, the less PC name, built during the Civil War in Western West Virginia. Also been on television and quite famous. Second largest hand-cut stone building in the world after the Kremlin. Little factoid there. You had an ice pick lobotomy there. I saw a cigar roll off a table while we were doing a show there, and
it's important to distinguish that, I think.
Oh, yes, a
The
phantom
distinction.
ice pick lobotomy. Could explain a lot. No, sorry, I'm trying to watch the clock and still get through some. Yeah, CL says I would love to go to Tala. I highly recommend it. Do you know what the scariest thing at Tala is? When the women who dress up like nurses are standing out front. That is the scariest thing to me. We were loading in for a show. I drove there. I had been there numerous times, and I see these two women in the Nurse Ratched white costumes, and I freaked the hell out. My palms started sweating. That's the creepiest thing to me is the nurses. That scares the hell out of me. Let me just say.
I actually have to say, I went to the Mansfield Reformatory, and the scariest thing that happened to me was when I was in the chapel. I heard,
Ooh.
and I was like, "What the?" And I turned, and a pigeon flew past me. And the one and only one time in my life I was ever in a paranormal building, and I screamed, and it was a pigeon.
I love that.
How many times the scariest things are very, very normal and mundane?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Every time
that's
I
usually-
jumped. Yeah, I was going to say every time I jumped during our 2-year investigation of the web library, every single time it was something absolutely mundane. Somebody dropped something, bumped something, a door closed. It was never anything paranormal.
So we have just a couple of quick stories before we wrap up. But Laura, you have one about some guest room furniture.
I do. I have a lovely guest room upstairs, and I have all of my mother's furniture. My mother passed 3 years ago, and my father passed 4 months before that, and my brother along the same time. Anyway, so I put all the furniture up, but she loved for people to come over, and she loved for them to really have a good rest. The linens were important. She always had the best, and everything was just so. And it was amazing. You go to that house and you just like magical, you fall asleep. But now everyone who stays in that room tells me that it's the best night's sleep that they've gotten in months, and that how peacefully they rest.
I can attest to
I was
that.
going to ask, is that where you stay when you stay with Lori?
It's where I stay.
And you're not a good sleeper anymore.
I always have the most, and you're right, Laura. I get in that bed. It's so cozy. It's perfect. Everything about it is perfect, and I love staying in that room.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. I feel like I'm just wrapped in just security.
And she would love that. I mean, that's how she loved that room, and she loved her house and her things. I have so many of her things. The dolls behind me, she made those dolls. I thought I'd bring them out because there's 3 of them, but she made those. This I got at a consignment store that people were freaked out about. Oh. Remember that, Tanya?
I do.
And then the thing directly behind me is a prayer cabinet. Let's see. Okay, there you go. And I got that when I got the blind, and but I have never felt anything from them at all.
Me either. And in fact, your house has incredibly good. I love your house. The energy in your house, and you do have a lot of things that you've found in antique stores, but the energy in your home is amazing.
Our first spiritual mentor, Antoinette, who we're going to tell a quick story about, her house was like that. And it was all full of antiques from all around the world. Now, Rosemary collected a lot of stuff in her travels around the world. And towards the end of her life, she got rid of a lot of it. She got very sensitive to some of the more negative energies, and they weren't helping with her illness and things like that. So things can change. I think intention is a lot. Angelina says, I put this up so some people may have read it, but she was at a Pennsylvania prison tour. The spirits could detect if people with abilities were there, right? You notice them, they notice that you noticed. I explained I was only there as a tour guest and not as a ghost investigator, and they left me alone. I think that intention is everything. And last night on Three Beards, I said, you and I really shouldn't call ourselves paranormal investigators. We're mediators between the living and the dead. We don't go to places just to see if we can get an EVP or see if our hackles go up or see if after 9 hours of watching video footage the next week, I see an orb. That's not really our thing. My time is pretty precious. So I think that the intention is really important. We've talked about this before because time's getting short. The silver dollar at the web. Yeah. Hey, folks, if a coin apparates out of nowhere and falls on the floor between you, someone very responsible needs to be the custodian of it. That happened one night. We were giving a tour at the now closed web library that resulted in our book, our 2-year investigation, and we had 12 drunken bridesmaids that night. It was a very long night. And we had 4 sensitives with us. We crossed over a burn victim from World War II that night after, because the girls went and got sick in the bathroom. They were questioning why the lights were not. It was horrible. 12 of them. 12 drunken bridesmaids.
So people were afflicted by reality TV ghost shows.
Yeah,
now that's exactly the name of a book.
Yeah. Oh wow. Yeah. 12 drunken brides. Yeah, in the Webb Memorial Library. So we felt really bad for the 4 young, very serious psychic medium sensitives who really came, to learn. And so we stayed much later than usual, which always was a problem. We sort of had made an agreement with the ghosts and spirits there that we would stay an hour and a half to an hour and 45 minutes. So here it is, over 2 hours later, we cross over the burn victim. We're in one of the last rooms. It's very late at night, and this coin drops out of the air. It's 74 Eisenhower silver dollar last year that they were made. There's a picture of it in the book. And Tanya, it fell next to a woman who was on the tour. And she said, well, it fell next to you. You're meant to have it. This coin messed with their dog for weeks. Whatever room the coin was in, the dog would go in the room and freak out, go nuts. And the activity stopped. And she mentioned it to her husband. He said, I took it to the bank. So that coin wound up in somebody else's hand. We learned a really,
I felt so bad.
Really valuable lesson
bad
that
about
night.
that, because I didn't think. To me, the whole thing was that the coin even apported. Like, where did it come from? I didn't think of there being an attachment to the coin. It was like the last thing on my mind. I thought they were just getting our attention with the coin. So when I had the woman take it, it was more like, well, there's no better souvenir from a haunted tour than an object that apported out of thin air. I didn't think there'd be any kind of attachment to it, but live and learn. I will never do that again.
No harm came to the dog, thankfully. Yeah. So it probably wasn't malevolent, but there was someone or something attached to that the dog was super, super in tune with.
Sensitive too.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So before I give our guests the last word, we have to tell this story because I think it's beautiful. We've talked a lot about our Aunt Annette. She was the biggest influence on me when I was a kid. She introduced me to the story of Jonathan Livingston Seagull without telling me that it was a book. She should just tell me the story when I was a kid. So when I was in college, I bought the book in a used bookstore, and I was like, how odd, Jonathan Livingston Seagull. And I realized that it was the story. It was beautiful. And she mentored us. She was the one who really put on your healer path. She really saw who you were, the star being that you are. And we lost her to a cerebral hemorrhage. I'm thinking of high anxiety. Very unexpectedly. They had just bought their dream home and she was redoing it and painting it. She sat down before taking a bath and she expired. And she was around for a long time. We would smell her cigarette smoke. Almost a year to the day, we get a phone call from our very dear friends who owned a used bookstore. Now, this huge bookstore, we met these very, very dear friends of mine. Knight and I have written musicals and all kinds of stuff together. Almost 20 years we've known each other. And they called and they said, there was this box of book.
It's important. One thing you forgot, we met them through Annabelle.
Yes, that's what I was starting to say. I'm sorry.
She took me there originally to get some mala beads because she was introducing me to mantra meditation. And she said, I know exactly where to take you to get these mala beads. And that's how I met Kate. And then we became friends. So
arguably, Knight is arguably one of my closest. He's like a brother to me. Indistinguishable. So they call almost a year to the day of my aunt's death. And they say, look, there was this box of books that was left anonymously on the back stoop of our bookstore. And there are these Way of the Cartouche cards. But we opened it up, and your aunt's name, Annette Medea, is written inside. So I don't know if they sent us a cell phone thing or whatever, but I immediately recognized it because there's so many handwritten things from my aunt. That is my aunt's name. Now, she had been married before she died for almost 20 years, and that was not her last name. So I called her husband, or, the widower, and I said, do you know anything about this? And he said, no, it has to be before my time. So she had given away this tarot at least 20 years before. And almost to the day of her passing, this comes back to the place where she introduced us to the people who got it and gave it to us, and we have it now, and use it. So I just thought, in the interest of not everything is evil, not everything is dark, death is totally harmless.
Yeah,
as
dying
Rob
is
Doss
perfectly safe.
always
As
said,
Ram Dass used
dying
to
is
say.
perfectly safe. We wanted to end with that story because it's amazing.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
It's I'm getting a little weepy. So let's give our contributors who we love, and we're so honored that you agreed.
Yes, thank you guys. This
to
was
do
so
this.
fun.
We want to give you guys the last word.
Thank you for having me. I am so honored to be here.
Last word, Michael. Final thoughts on haunted objects.
Actually, you kind of summed it up pretty much with what you just said. Is don't fear 99% of what you have. Think, especially if you're going to buy something or acquire something that's an antique or something that may have, again, most of the time, anything that has a spirit attachment is just a person who's no longer with us. It doesn't mean they're evil. It's not a demon. It's just a person who's not here anymore. And it's usually just their energy anyway. So take heed. Obviously, you don't want to just take anything and run with it. But at the same time, don't fear most of it. So
and don't pee on it.
And buy your Outer Realms merchandise.
Yeah, don't pee on it.
And don't pee on it.
Lori, last words.
I have had good experiences with the objects that I have. I know people. I'm not completely stupid. I know that there is darkness out there. I choose to see the light. And I honor the people that had the possessions, and I'm very respectful of it. And that's
awesome.
That's just how it is. I do it. I don't know.
I don't want to take Michael and Lori off screen. I want to keep them with us to the bitter end. I do want to say, though, that Tanya, you want to tell the audience what this is?
So I am so honored. I was contacted by Craig at Three Beards podcast to ask if I would collaborate, if my Outer Realms Bathworks brand would like to collaborate with Three Beards to create their very own brand of beard oil. And I asked them how, what they would like it to be like, and have created that for them. So now you can get your very own Three Beards podcast beard oil at the Outer Realms Bathworks.
And there's a great advertisement. We ran a little longer tonight than we wanted to, so we're not going to play the video. We'll play it somewhere down the line, but you can check it out on the Into Realms page.
Yeah,
so I just want to give a shout out. So this is where we say goodbye.
Yep.
You guys can play along if you know it by heart. We'll see you next week on Into the Outer Realms, where
the paranormal and the supernatural are just
the normal and the natural. So, Lori, Michael, thank you. Thank you to our audience.
Thanks,
Love
everybody.
We'll see you next week. Everybody be safe with the storm. I hope everybody's lights stay on.
Stay warm.
Good night.
Be well.
Bye, guys.
Okay, good night.
Good night.
Just throwing up these thank yous here.